Hey everybody, this is the review for our first Malachim test. Officially we're learning Malachim Aleph and Bet. We're learning the end of Malachim Aleph going into Malachim Bet. Our first test is only on Malachim Aleph. It's on units 1 through 3. Unit 1 is the introduction to Malachim, and units 2 and 3 cover the end of Parak Tet Zayin and the entire Parak Yud Zayin. Basically the story of Eliyahu showing up and stopping the rain, and a couple of stories related to him at Nachal Crete and at the house of the Almana, the widow. Okay, before we start, just a reminder, the way the test is going to work, it's basically going to be in two parts. First part's going to be just general information. There'll be a couple of basic information questions. You have to prove your answers from Psukim, a couple of Mi Amar Al-Miz, Al-Mi Ne'amars. And then the second section is going to be some thematic stuff, in which I'm either going to give you the psukim, the psukim or the words in the psukim, and ask you what this teaches us, or I'm going to give you a theme that we came up with, and I'm going to ask you for proof from the psukim and to explain how the psukim or a certain phrase in the psukim or the text prove that this is indeed correct. Here we go. I'm going to first start off by reviewing some psukim from Malachim Aleph, Parak Yud Aleph, the story of the end of Shlomo HaMelech's life. You don't need to know so many details about this. I'm going to read it through quickly, probably skipping through psukim, just to get the general idea. Here we go. HaMelech Shlomo Ahav Nashim Nachriot Rabot Vet Bat Paro. So Shlomo HaMelech loved many foreign women, including the daughter of Paro, Moabiyot. Okay, these are all the nations that he loved women from. He had many wives. Vayihi pasuk dalid vayihi, and it was la'etzik nas Shlomo, when Shlomo got old, nashavna he to it lovo, they turned his heart away, acharei lahim acharim, following other gods, lo hayal levavo shalem im Hashem elokav, his heart was not complete, only with God, kilvav David aviv, like David his father. Vayelech Shlomo acharei ashtarot, elhei atzidonim, acharei malkam, all these different avodah zaros he followed. And pointed out that it says Vayelech Shlomo acharei ashtarot. He followed them. He didn't necessarily bow to them. It's unclear exactly what he did. Shlomo doesn't do a lot of good things. God isn't happy. Pasuk Tet Vayit Hanaf Hashem b'Shlomo. A guy gets really mad at Shlomo. Ki natal levavo miyim Hashem l'kei Yisrael v'hanira l'pamayim. What does he say? V'tzivay elav et hadavar hazeh. He commanded him the following: Livil tilech et Elohim achirim achirim below shamar. How many times? Asher tzivar Hashem Moshe. Right? I think it was 3 times, something like that. Hashem says to him. But the bottom line is, he says, because God is upset that Shlomo doesn't listen, follows avodah zaros near the end of his life, he's influenced by his wives. Vayomar Hashem l'Shlomo. Now here's the important part. God says to Shlomo, Yan, because asher hayta zot imcha, because you were like this, v'lo shamarti b'riti v'chukokai, you did not follow the treaty with me and my laws, asher tziveti alecha, that I commanded you. What am I going to do? Kroa ekra et hamlacha me'alecha v'natati elabdecha. I'm going to tear the kingdom away and give it to your servants. However, Vayamecha lo asen, I'm not going to do it in your time. Laman David abdecha avicha, because of the sake of David, your father. Miad bincha ekra, and I'm going to tear it away from bincha, your son. Rak et kol mlacha lo ekra, I'm not going to take away the entire kingdom. Shevet echad etein livnecha, I'm going to give one section, one tribe, literally, but it's going to be like one kingdom, so I don't know, one like group of people, because it's really part of Binyamin as well. Laman David Avdi, for the sake of David, my servant. Laman Yerushalayim Asher B'Chag, and for the sake of Yerushalayim. The basics here being Shlomo HaMelech worshipped avodah zarah near the end of his life. As a punishment, God says, I'm going to take away the kingdom from you, but I'm going to leave. I'm not going to do it in your lifetime for the sake of David. Why that is a good question. We didn't discuss that. And I'm also going to hold back one shevet, which is shevet of Yehuda, and also some of Binyamin, for you. Why? For the sake of David and for the sake of Yerushalayim. Why is that? Because the city of Yerushalayim was in Yehuda. So now even though the kingdom was being torn away from Shlomo, at least the city of Yerushalayim and the Beit HaMikdash would remain in his hands. And why is that important? Because that's the family that built Yerushalayim. Shlomo himself built the temple, built Yerushalayim, made it important. So for that reason, it's important for God to keep the temple in the Beit HaMikdash in the hands of the family that built it, so that they would care for it as best as it could be cared for. Then we skip ahead to Pasuk Chaf Vav, which is the story of how this begins the story of how the kingdom gets torn away from Shlomo. V'yeravam ben Nevat Efrati min Hatzureda. Okay, this person named Yeravam ben Nevat, he's from Ephrat. V'shem imot tzura, Aisha almana, his mother was a widow. Eved lishlomo, who was a servant to Shlomo. Vayarem yad bamelech, and he rebelled against the king. V'zeh davar, here's how it happened. Shlomo banat milo at hamilo sagar parati or David Avi. Okay, Shlomo did a couple of things with the cities. Here we go. Vayish Yeravam gibor chal. He had this man Yeravam that he knew about, who was a good warrior. Vayar Shlomo at Hanar. He saw this lad Kiosei Malacho. He was a good worker. Vayafkedelo. He appointed him Lachosevel Beit Yosef, the tax houses of Yosef. So that's where Shlomo actually brings Yeravam in, and this is going to be the Eved, the servant, that's going to end up taking the kingdom away from him. Important to realize. Okay, first thing that's thematic. Important to realize. He puts him over Beit Yosef. Okay, Beit Yosef is important because, as we know, Yosef was the brothers. Okay, Yosef always represents, right, civil war. Okay, Yosef was the one who had his brother sold him. We have civil war between brothers, and this Yeravam is also going to be the one who creates a civil war amongst the Jewish people, splitting the kingdom. So now we continue. He was at this time. Yeravam yatzam Yerushalayim. Yeravam is going on a walk. He runs into a prophet, Achia, who mitkaseb salma chadasha. Yeravam is wearing this new cloak. Ushneim levadam. They're alone in the field. Vayit pos Achia bisalma. He grabs the cloak that he's wearing. Actually, it's unclear actually who was wearing the cloak. I'm thinking now it could be Achia. Either way, he rips it into 12 pieces. Vayomer Yeravam, he says to Yeravam, Kach lecha asar, you take 10 of the pieces for yourself. Kicho amar Hashem lokei Yisrael. What is this a sign? It's a sign that God said, Hini korea tam lacham yad Shlomo. I'm going to tear the kingdom from Shlomo. Unitati lacham, I'm going to give it to you. At asara shvatim, the 10 shvatim, right? That's why he's taking the 10 pieces. The shevet achad, and one shevet, it's actually not shevet, it's actually two, it's Yehuda and Binyamin. Yelo lamad David Abdi lamad Yerushalayim, like we said earlier. Ha'ir asher bacharti ba mikol shiftei Yisrael. Right? The most important city of all is still going to stay in your hands. And as you pointed out, the reason for that is probably most likely because we want to keep Yerushalayim in the hands of the family that built it, so that they'll take the best care possible. So that is really the nevuah of how Yeravam knew he was supposed to be the one to take over. We're going to move on a little bit to Parak Yud Bet and see a little bit of what Yeravam did after he became king, or to become king. Actually, I take that back. It's going to be after Yeravam becomes king. So after this kingdom is split and Yeravam becomes king, so look what happens. Vayiven Yeravam et Shechem, Har Ephraim vayesheba. So he builds the city Shechem in Har Ephraim, and he sits there. So he makes a throne basically in Shechem. Now, why is that important? Okay, thematic again. Right? Why is Shechem important? This is Yosef's city. Okay, when Yaakov gives Shechem as a special gift to Yosef on his deathbed, he tells Natati lecha Shechem echad al banecha al achecha. I'm giving you he says to Yosef, I'm giving you a Shechem echad, right? A shoulder, literally meaning above your brothers, meaning I'm going to give you the city of Shechem. This is Yosef's city. And again, as we know, as we pointed out before, Yosef represents civil war. So he's making a point here by specifically building a throne in Yosef's city in Shechem. Okay, he also builds the city of Penuel. Even at Penuel, I don't know offhand what the real significance of Penuel is. Vayomer Yeravam bilibo, and Yeravam says in his heart, I'm afraid the kingdom's going to go back to David. Why? I'm afraid that the people are going to go to Yerushalayim and bring Karbanot. They're going to remember how beautiful Yerushalayim is, and they're going to say, hey, we should give the kingdom back to David's family. Right? They're going to go back to their original master. El Rechavam Melech Yehuda. So Rechavam is Shlomo's son, is now the king of Yehuda. Right? That one or two Shvatim that have Yerushalayim. The Harguni, they're going to kill me. V'shavu el Rechavam Melech Yehuda. They're going to go back. So Yeravam is afraid. Hey, I can't let these people go to Yerushalayim. So what does he do? Melech, he takes advice. Vayas shtei egelei zahav. He makes 2 egel zahavs. Vayomer lehem, he says to the people, Rav lachem Yerushalayim. You don't have to go to Yerushalayim. Hinei Elohecha Yisrael. These are the God that you want. Asher luchem eretz Mitzrayim. That took you out of Mitzrayim. Okay, Egel hazahav is very important. Okay, because that shows us just the way that he was thinking in terms of influencing. If you want to influence people, you don't totally try to give them something new. right? You take something that you already know is going to influence them, and you try to create a replacement religion. Okay, we'll notice this points out a replacement religion. Okay, the same way in the Jewish people's history, right? They worship the Egel Zahav not as a not really as a new god, but to kind of replace the religion of their god, right? To replace the way they served, right? They served, and Moshe was their leader. Now they had a new leader, these Egel Hazavs. It's not totally new. It's like a replacement for the religion, but not for their god, to make them feel a little bit comfortable. So let's continue. So he vayasem edachad beveit el ve'achad natan bedan. So he spreads out these two Egel Hazavs. Vayidavar zel lechatav yelchu lifnei achad adan vayas et beit bamot vayas kohanim miktzot ha'am asher lo hayu mibnei Levi. And what does he do? Now this pasuk is important. Vayas kohanim miktzot ha'am. He makes priests asher lo hayu mibnei Levi. So again, same thing, replacement religion, right? He has kohanim, he has priests. However, they are ones that are not from Levi. So this also points to a replacement religion. It's not like he just wanted to throw away the original religion. He said, listen, if we create a new set of Kohanim who are not from Levi, so it's similar to the Jewish original religion, the way they served, which was with priests, but the priests will be not from Levi. And what else does he do? Interesting. Vayas Yeravam Chag b'chodesh hashmini b'chamisha asar yom lachodesh k'chag asher b'Yehuda. He creates a version of Sukkot which is not on Sukkot. How does he do it? B'chodesh hashmini b'chamisha asar. B'chodesh hashmini is the month after Tishrei. So again, he creates a holiday which is similar to Sukkot, but he does it in the 8th month, again, trying to draw people away not to something totally new, but to provide an accurate replacement, a replacement for their religion, kind of like a substitute. Instead of God, and instead of going directly to God, we'll go to the Egel Hazahav, the way you did in the past, right? Instead of having Kohanim from Levi, we'll have Kohanim from wherever we want. Instead of having Sukkot in the 7th month, which is Tishrei, we'll have it in the 8th month, which is Cheshvan, Marach Cheshvan. Again, it's the 7th month counting from Nisan. Is Tishrei, and Marach Cheshvan is the 8th month counting from Tishrei. That's basically enough for now. In terms of the introduction to Malachim. So again, just to summarize, we have Shlomo sins, right? Then we have loses Malchut, he loses the kingdom, to Yeravam. Good handwriting there, I know, you're jealous. To Yeravam. Then we have Yeravam, Yeravam sets up a replacement religion for Judaism, right? Again, it's not totally different than Judaism. It's a replacement religion, right? It's meant to kind of make them feel like they're comfortable moving into doing something a little different. And then we'll draw a quick map so we know where the two kingdoms were. So I want to draw a beautiful map of Israel, which is probably going to end up being horrible. Okay, here we go. There's Israel. Not bad. Okay, we got a little, Kinneret over here. Jordan River. Okay, maybe I made that a little bit too far. Okay, we got our Jordan River. Anyway, so here's Eretz Yisrael. And as we pointed out, the kingdom is split to a northern and southern kingdom. Okay, the northern kingdom is Yisrael, okay, which represents 10 of the Shvatim. The southern kingdom is Yehuda. I spelled that wrong. Okay. Yehuda is the southern kingdom. Yerushalayim is about there in Yehuda. And again, Yisrael is, the ruler of Yisrael is Yeravam ben Nevat. Yeravam ben Nevat. And the king of Yehuda, I'll make a little crown for Yeravam. There we go. He's the king. Okay. And the king of Yehuda is Rechavam, very similar to Yeravam, which is interesting. And he is Ben Shlomo. Okay, that's Shlomo HaMelech's son. So the king, the son that gets to keep at least 2 of the Shvatim, where the Beit HaMikdash in Yerushalayim is, that's Rechavam. Okay, you got to know where Yerushalayim is, the northern kingdom, the southern kingdom, the king of each. One's Yisrael, one's Yehuda, and here we point out it's not only Yehuda, it's Yehuda and Binyamin. And finally, the last important thing to remember from the introduction to Malachim, before we skip ahead, is the importance that Avodah Zarah plays in turning the Jewish people away, which started with Shlomo HaMelech. Okay, now let's move ahead to what exactly the limud that we're doing this year. The stories related to Eliyahu Hanavi begin in Perek Tet Zayin of Malachim Aleph. Eliyahu hasn't shown up yet, but the introduction to why he shows up and what he does begins at the end of Perek Tet Zayin. Here we go. Let's read through it first, and we'll point out important things that we need to know along the way. This is the story of Achav, who is now, I don't even remember what number king of Yisrael he is, again, the northern kingdom, and the bad things that he's been doing. But Achav ben Omri, the son of Omri, Malach al Yisrael, ruled over Yisrael, the northern kingdom, Bishnat Shlosh Ushloshim, excuse me, Bishnat Shloshim Ushmona Shana, in the 38th year, LaAsa Melech Yehuda, in the reign of Asa, the king of Yehuda. So we have two kings here. We have Achav ben Omri, right, who is the king of Yisrael, and we have Asa, who is the king of Yehuda, the southern kingdom at this point. So now we hear about Achav, Vayimloch Achav ben Omri al Yisrael b'Shomron. So he lived in the Shomron. That's where he ruled from. For how long? Esrim u'shtayim shana, for 22 years. And look what we learn about Achav. Vayas Achav ben Omri hara be'enei Hashem. Achav ben Omri does bad in the eyes of God. Mikol asher lefanav, worse than all who came before him. And what's the example? Vayehi hanakel l'tachto, the least of what he did, b'chato Yeravam ben Nevat, is the same of the sins of Yeravam ben Nevat. So the least of what Achav did was the worst of what Yeravam did. This tells us exactly how bad Achav was in terms of Avodah Zarah. So what was so bad? Let's read some bad things. Vayikach et Isha, he took for a wife who? Et Izebel. Her name was Izebel, Jezebel, Bat et Baal, the daughter of Et Baal, Melech Tidonim, who was the king of the Tidonim. What did he do? Vayelech, and he went, Achav went, Vayavod et Baal, he worshipped the Baal, Vayishtach v'lo, and he bowed to it. That's important, we're going to see in a minute. Vayakam Mizbeach, he put up a Mizbeach la Baal, for the Baal, Beit HaBaal asher banam b'Shomron, right? And he built a Beit HaBaal, a temple for the Baal, which was in Shomron. Vayas Achav et Hasherah, he built an Asherah as well. Vayosef Achav lasot, and he did even more, and he added lahachis et Hashem Elokei Yisrael, right, to anger God. Mikol malchei Yisrael asher yilufanav, worse than all the kings that came before him, right? And what else did he do? We're not going to worry about. We're not going to worry about pasuk lamed daled. We didn't really go over. We didn't really learn it, but it does tell you that during that time, this guy named Chiel built up Yericho and built up other cities that he wasn't supposed to do. That's not the important part. The important part is seeing what Achav did. And now let's do a little bit of analysis of the important parts that we see here. Okay, the first thing you'll notice is how Achav is compared to those who came before him. So now, where do we see that comparison? So sometimes it's obvious in the psukim. Okay, this is the obvious part. What does he say? Right, Mikol asher lefanav. We see it twice. Mikol asher lefanav. And we have it later of Asher Hayu Lefanav, right? All those who came before him. So we're comparing him. Interestingly, the pasuk also calls him Achav ben Omri, right? Not once, not twice, but 3 times it refers to him as Ben Omri. Before finally going back and just calling him Achav, like over here by Yas Achav. So we see that clearly the Torah is trying to show how he built off of what would happen beforehand, probably more as a result of what happened beforehand. It's not like he's doing something totally new here. He's building off what was done earlier. He was influenced, but he's taking it to the next level. What is it that he took to the next level? So he pointed out one interesting fact here, and that's the phrase "Vayishtachavu lo." He bowed down to the Baal. The question is, why is it important to tell us that? Didn't all kings, anyone who worshipped Avodah Zarah, bow down to the Baal? So perhaps not. Right? What this seems to be telling us is that as opposed to the other kings who may have gone after the Baal for other purposes, he really believed that Baal was his God. Other kings might have thought like, well, I believe in God, I believe in Hashem, but I'm going to try out the Baal. So I'm going to, it seems like it's interesting. Let me give it a shot. Vayishtachavelo, bowing to something, right, shows that I think you are this is the most important thing in the world. So that shows you what he did that was so bad. Again, he vayishtachavelo, right? He built a mizbeach and he built a temple for it, and he really did. It wasn't so good. Right, and one last thing to point out is also the name of his father-in-law, Et Baal. Right, so clearly his father-in-law, right, he basically married right into a family that just was complete Baal worshippers, and you see how that influenced him. He had absolutely no respect towards Hashem at all, as opposed to other kings may have had respect to God. Right, we saw with Shlomo HaMelech. Right, it says his heart wasn't full with God. He did avodah zarah. He was still connected to God, but he worshipped other avodah zarahs like recreationally, not Achav, not at all. Okay, let's move on. Okay, now let's get on to Perek Yud Zayin. Perek Yud Zayin is now Eliyahu's reaction to Achav's avodah zarah. Eliyahu decides he's going to stop the rain. He's going to punish Achav for his avodah zarah by stopping the rain. And we're immediately introduced to Eliyahu's actions without hearing anything else about him from beforehand. Here we go. We'll start with just the first couple psukim. Vayomer Eliyahu hatishbi mitoshvei Gilad. Eliyahu hatishbi, which literally means from the place called Toshav, mitoshvei Gilad, who was one of the people who then came and settled in Gilad. What did Eliyahu say? El Achav, to Achav the king. Chai Hashem Elokei Yisrael, I swear by God's name, Asher Mariti Lufanav, who I have stood before. Im hiyeh hashanim ha'ela talum atar ki im lefi dvari. Right? If there will be during these years rain and dew, it will only be im lefi dvari, by my word. So again, he stops the rain and says, the rain will only come back if I say so. Then the pasuk continues by telling us what God's reaction to this was. Vayihi devar Hashem elav lemor. God's word came to him, to Eliyahu, saying, Lech mizeh, get out of here. Upanita lacha kedma, turn to the east. V'nistarta, you should hide benachal Crete, in the wadi, right, which is a valley that gets filled with rainwater, called Crete. Asher al panei hayarden, which is on the Jordan River. V'hayame hanachal tishteh, you should drink from the wadi. Vet ha'orvim tziviti, I designated ravens lachal kalecha sham, to feed you there while you were there. Okay, and he listens. Vayelech, he goes. Vayas kidvar Hashem, he does what Hashem says. Vayelech vayeshev benachal Crete, he lives in the wadi of Crete. Asher al panei hayarden. Right? Again, it's being emphasized, the Yarden. We'll get back to that. The ravens bring him bread and meat in the morning. He's living it up, right? Bread and meat every day. He drinks from the wadi. After a year, the water dries up, the wadi dries up. Why? Because there's no rain water on the ground. Now, what we pointed out from here is that all of this is meant, the first 7 psukim are meant to teach us about Eliyahu punishing the people and God sending a message to him like, maybe you should reconsider a little bit about why you punish him. So what are our clues? So the first thing that we have here is Eliyahu just shows up out of nowhere, right? Out of nowhere. Where did he come from? No idea. We're not introduced to him. Eliyahu punishes the people that he feels no connection to. It's not like he knows them, he lives amongst them, and now he's going to punish them. He comes up out of nowhere and to punish. Okay, out of NW, which stands for nowhere. Sorry if it's sloppy, but let's keep going. The next thing that was interesting is the repetition of the shoresh toshev, toshvei gil, right? Eliyahu hatishbi mitoshvei gilad. As he pointed out, a ger toshav, okay, is a settler, one who settles, but is not part of the people. That's what a toshav is. Because Eliyahu came out of nowhere, is not the kind of person who has lived among the Jewish people. He's a settler. He's coming out of nowhere to live among them, and therefore it makes it easier for him to be able to punish the people because he feels no connection to them. And that's kind of the message that we're getting of Eliyahu. So again, Eliyahu comes out of nowhere and just automatically punishes the people by stopping the rain. And again, even the words, the psukim, the way he's described, hint to this idea of being a settler, someone who lives from somewhere else and comes to settle just to live among you. We talked about a ger toshav. So that's what the psukim are hinting to. Where else do we see hints to this? Let's see God's reaction to this. Where does God send him? So God sends him to a place called Nachal Crete. Crete means to be cut off. The psukim point out twice that it's al pnei hayarden. I forget who in class pointed that out. Al pnei hayarden. I apologize for not remembering. That wasn't my own thought. Right. The Yarden is the river that separates Jordan. Well, separates other countries, right, from Eretz Yisrael. It's the border of Eretz Yisrael. So he's also sending Eliyahu, right back out to the edge of Eretz Yisrael, saying like you're really like an outsider here, Eliyahu. Okay, that's another thing that's important to teach them. That shows us that's the message being taught to us about Eliyahu. Eliyahu is actually getting a message sent to him by God. You're going to a place called Crete, which means cut off. You should be cut off from the people because you're not really part of them. And you're going to near the Yarden, which is basically on the way out of Eretz Yisrael. How else does God try to teach Eliyahu this lesson? So we look at two things. A, the messengers of the food were the Orvim, the ravens. And as you pointed out, ravens generally represent cruelty. Cruelty. Ravens in Tanakh and the Chazal are known to be cruel. Because they're teaching Eliyahu, hey Eliyahu, you're acting a little cruel here. Secondly, what happens at the end? The wadi dries up. Why? Ki lo haya geshem ba'aretz. Eliyahu is now experiencing. He's experiencing, and again, I'm just going to write sloppily. Experiencing. The results of his actions. He's understanding, right? God is saying, listen, you came out of nowhere, right? You're a toshab. You don't understand these people. You're happy just punishing them. No problem for you, right? Why? And he sends him the message by saying, hey, how does Eliyahu get the message? Go to a place called Cut Off. It's near the outskirts of Eretz Yisrael. I'm going to send cruel animals to feed you and teach you, hey, you're acting in a cruel manner, right? And you should really change your ways, the way these cruel ravens are changing their ways to feed you. And I'm going to show you the results of what you did. Maybe if you understood what the results would have been of your actions, right? Maybe then you wouldn't have done so. But you didn't think about the results. You weren't thinking about it. Why? Because these aren't really your people. You're a Jew, yeah, you're a Navi, yes. But these aren't really your people. So of course you weren't thinking about the results. I'm going to make you acutely aware of the results by making the rain dry up and you realizing, hey, now I have no water either. So again, these are all hints to teach us two important thematic things. Again, A, that it was easy for Eliyahu to punish the people because he kind of didn't really relate to them so well. And B, that God sending him to this place is not just, coincidental, just to give him a place to stay, but it's full of symbolism to teach Eliyahu exactly what he did wrong. It's an education for Eliyahu. Okay, now we continue. We're going to move on to read the story of what happens to Eliyahu next. The rest of the psukim that we're going to read, the only thing you need to know is the pshat of the psukim. You don't need to know any of the thematic stuff. We discussed it a little bit in class, but we're kind of in the middle of learning about it now, so I'm not going to make you responsible for it. Okay, so I'm just going to read and get the pshat. Vayhi devar Hashem elav le'mor. So again, now Eliyahu is by this wadi. The wadi dries up. He's got nothing left. So Vayhi devar Hashem elav le'mor. The word of Hashem comes. The word of Hashem comes to him again, saying the following: Kum lech Tzarfata. Go towards Tzarfat. Asher leTzidon, which is ruled by Tzidon. V'yashavta sham. You'll live there. V'hinei tziveti sham isha almana. I've designated a widow there. Lechal kaleka. To To sustain you, to feed you while you're there. So he listens. Vayakim, he gets up. Vayelech Tzarfat, he goes to Tzarfat. Vayavo petachir, he goes to the gate of the city. V'hinei sham isha almana, he sees this widow. Mikoshesh reitzim, she's gathering wood. Vayikra eleh, he calls to her. Vayomar, and he says, Kachina li mat mayim b'kli v'eshteh. Please take for me a little bit of water in a cup, v'eshteh, and I'll drink it. Bring me some water. V'atelech achacha, she goes to get water. Vayikra eleh, and as she's going, he calls to her and says, Vayomar, and he says, Lichina li, please get for me also pat lechem yadecha, a little piece of bread in your hand. Bring me some bread too. Okay. Again, God did tell Eliyahu to find this widow to feed him, but it's interesting that she's kind of poor and he's asking for her food. Vatomer, and she says, Chai Hashem Elokecha, I swear to you, im yesh li ma'og, that I don't even have enough for like a little cake. Ki im malo kaf kemach bakad. Ki im, except all this is all I have. Malo kaf, a handful of kemach, a flour bakad in a jar. Ume'at shem, and a little oil, but tzapach, in a frying pan. And what am I doing? V'hinani mikoshesh et shnayim eitzim. I'm going to gather up just 2 small pieces of wood. Ubati, I'm going to come. V'asitiu liyu, I'm going to come home and I'm going to make this fire and the food for myself and for my son. V'achal nuhu, and we'll eat. V'amanu, and we're going to die. This is our last meal. We can't afford anything. Again, we see Eliyahu coming more in contact with the things, the results of the things that he did wrong. V'yomer heleha Eliyahu, and Eliyahu said to her, Al tirya, don't fear. Bo'i asik v'echa, just come, listen to me. Ach asili misham uga ktana. Sorry. Bo'i asik devarech. You could do what you want. Do what you said. You can make food for you and your son. I'm not going to bother you. However, ach asili misham uga ktana b'rishna. First, trust me. Make a little cake for me first. V'hotzeti li, and bring it out to me. V'lachal uvincha tasi b'achrona, and for you and for your son, make food afterwards. Eliyahu is asking her really to have a lot of faith in him. Kicho amar Hashem Elokei. So this is what God said. I promise. Kara kemach lo techlet, the jar of flour will not run out. V'tzapachar Hashem lo techsar, and the frying pan, the pan of oil, lo techsar, will not lose any oil. Ayom titain Hashem geshem al pnei adam, until God makes it rain. So don't worry, he says. Feed me first. It's worth it because God promised that your jar and frying pan will keep replenishing the oil and the flour. You'll never run out. Trust me, you can give it to me. She did what Eliyahu said. They all ate. Beitayimim for many days. The flour never ran out. They never lost any oil. Like God said through the messenger Eliyahu. Finally, we have one more story with Eliyahu Navi. It was after these things happened. The daughter of this woman who's the Balat Habayit, this Almanah who ran this house, right? That Eliyahu was living in. Her son got sick. His disease, his sickness was so bad. Chazak ma'od, very strong. He had almost no life left in him. She says to Eliyahu, what is there between me and you? Ish Elohim, man of God. Did you come here to me to remind me of my sin, to kill my son? Right? Is that why you're here? He said to her, trust me, give me your son. He took her from her chest. She was holding him. He took her from her lap, I should say. He brings her up to the attic, where he's living. And he lies this child on the bed. He calls out to God, and he says, Hashem Elokai, God, Hashem my God, Hagam et ha'almana asher ani mitgorer ima hareota. Hagam et ha'almana, eat also to this widow, asher ani mitgorer ima, that I'm living with. Hareota, you're going to do evil to her too. Lahamitat benat, to kill her son. So then he prays to God, kind of complains to God this shouldn't be happening. He stretches over this kid 3 times. He calls Hashem, saying, Hashem my God, please return the soul to this child, this child, al kirbo, into his body, right? Give him his soul back. He listens to Eliyahu, and he brings the kid back to life. Eliyahu takes this boy, and he takes him down from the attic to the main part of the house. He gives the kid back to his mother. And she says, Eliyahu says, look, your son is alive. The woman says, Eliyahu to Eliyahu, now I know, you're a true man of God, and God's word is in your mouth, completely true. So again, we see this kind of transformation from Eliyahu, that he's now viewed as an Isha Elokim, that he actually is carrying the word of God, as opposed to before it seemed like he was just doing whatever he wanted on his own. Now it seems like he's actually doing what God wants. He actually davens to God for the first time. We see him talking to God for the first time, asking, as opposed to just doing. And as he points out, I know that you are an Isha Elokim, and we also see that he actually cares about people at this point. He goes out of his way to save someone's life, which is different than stopping the rains when everybody is starving. So that's basically it. Again, you need to know the facts of the psukim, be able to quote from psukim your answers. There's some al-mi ne'amars. In terms of the thematic stuff you saw, it was really just 2 major things. It was what's wrong with what Eliyahu did, and how is God showing him this message. It's what did Achav do wrong, and how do we see that Achav tried to replace the religion of the Jews, and how he tried to he was worse than the people who came before him because he added to the fact that he actually gave into this God more than anything else. That's basically the thematic stuff. You're going to have to know the thematic stuff for the test. And again, the rest of the things you have to just know the facts. One more thing I just realized that I need to do, and that is to discuss the punishment of stopping the rain. So just to discuss that quickly. So why is it that Eliyahu stops the rain as his punishment? So the simplest interpretation is we discussed about Kriyat Shema, right? In Kriyat Shema, in the Parsha Vayam Shemoah, God says, hey, if you do good, then I'll make it rain and you'll have good crops. If you don't do good, then and you go after other Avodah Zaras, then I'm going to have to make it a little harder for you to, I'm going to stop the rain, I'm going to make it difficult, you're going to go through droughts. So it seemed that Eliyahu was just carrying along what God wanted. Now, did God want Eliyahu to be the one to do that as opposed to him? I don't know. That's one version. The second explanation we had, which is very interesting, is that we said that Baal and Asherah are both rain gods. Okay? These are both rain gods in the world, the ancient world, Mesopotamian world. These were actually rain gods. Baal, we said, represents the male version of the rain god, right? The male, again, just the way childbirth works, right? You have the male who is fertilizing the female, and the female gives birth. So you have Baal, who is the male who represents the actual rain. Okay? And then we have Asherah, who is the female god, okay, and representing, we'll say, growth from rain, which is why Asherah is very often represented as a tree. It's often we call an Asherah tree, because a tree is obviously what grows from the rain. So this is why the proper punishment for worshiping Baal was Eliyahu stopping the rain. He was basically saying, hey, you think that you're going to go to Baal and Baal's going to control the rain? No, not happening. I'm the one who controls the rain. God is the one who controls rain, so I'm stopping the rain. Don't think it's Baal. And one more thing you need to know for the test is that this also explains why it was so easy for kings to go after the Baal and worship the Baal. Even if they believe in God, it was always like, well, rain is so important. Could it really hurt to try to worship a rain god? Maybe it'll be helpful. It explains why it was easy for people to go off the path and to the Baal, which is why everything that happened before him was just building up to Yeravam, to Achav, eventually saying, not only am I just going to go to the Baal as just in case for rain, but I'm actually going to worship Baal as my God. Okay, that's it. This has been a pretty long video. I'm tired from talking. I hope you're not tired from listening, and I hope you got something out of this. Please feel free to email me any questions, and good luck on the test.